Hey, friends. It's time for our next test, and we're using Edpuzzle today. And of course, this test is all from Regents. It's based on Regents questions. All right. So, are you ready? Good. Let's go. Number one, the diagram represents a sugar cube being dropped into an undisturbed beaker of water at room temperature. One sugar molecule is labeled. Which one of the following diagrams best represents the distribution of sugar molecules in the water 1 day later? A, B, C, D. Question two. The diagram below shows an experimental setup using an artificial plant cell. Molecules A and B are commonly found in plant cells. When tested, it was discovered that molecule A quickly passed through the artificial plant cell membrane. Molecule B did not pass through. The locations of molecules A and B at the beginning of the experiment are shown. Which one of the following statements best describes what was observed when the setup was examined 20 minutes later? A. Only molecule B was found both inside and outside of the cell. B. Both molecules A and B were found inside and outside of the artificial cell. C. Only molecule A was found both inside and outside of the artificial cell. Or D. Molecule A remained inside the artificial cell and molecule B remained outside the cell. Number three. The diagram below represents a laboratory experiment involving sucrose and water molecules in a cellophane bag, which functions in the same way as dialysis tubing. Here's at the beginning of the experiment, and here's the end of the experiment. Okay. Which one of the following statements correctly explains the rise of the liquid in the tube at the end of the experiment? A. Water entered the bag due to the lower concentration of water inside. The extra water pushed the liquid up the tube as the bag filled. B. Sucrose molecules moved out of the bag and up the tube while water moved out, causing the rise of the liquid in the tube. C. The concentration of sucrose molecules increased as the water molecules entered the bag. This concentration increase pushed the liquid up the tube. D. Sucrose indicator entered the bag and reacted with the sucrose molecules. The reaction made the bag increase in size and pushed the liquid up the tube. Number four. The diagram below represents one of many microscopic air sacs in the human lung. The alveolus, air sac, is a place where oxygen and carbon dioxide move into or out of the blood, as represented in this diagram. Right? Oxygen moving into the blood, CO2 moving out of the blood. Which one of the statements best explains why these gases are able to move in the direction shown in this diagram? A. The blood coming to the lungs is low in CO2 and high in O2, so the gases each diffuse from a lower to a higher concentration in this area. B. The blood coming to the lungs is high in carbon dioxide and low in oxygen, so the gases each diffuse from a higher to a lower concentration in this area. C. The O2 is needed by the cell, so it is actively transported into the blood. The CO2, which is not needed, is actively transported out of the blood. Or D. The CO2 moves out of the capillary and into the alveolus to make more room for the blood to carry oxygen. Number five, in which cell structure is energy extracted from nutrients? Is energy extracted? Is it A, ribosome, B, vacuole, C, chloroplast, or D, mitochondrion? Question six. A student performed an experiment to see if water temperature affects the level of activity in aquatic snails. The student set up 4 tanks with 5 snails in each tank. All 4 of the setups were identical in every way except for the temperature of the water. In order to make conclusions that were more valid, the student could A. Carry out the experiment for a shorter period of time, B, use a larger number of snails. C, change the size of the tank. D, alter the pH of the water. Question 7. A child with cystic fibrosis has an altered protein in his cells that stops chloride ions from leaving the cells. This protein most likely affects the functioning of A, ribosomes, B, nuclei, C, cell membranes, D, mitochondria. Number 8. Some viruses attack cells by attaching to their outer covering, entering and taking over their genetic machinery. Viruses are able to invade cells after first attaching to their A, cell membrane, B, genetic machinery, C, viral proteins, or D, nuclear membrane. Number 9, the diagram below illustrates the release of a chemical, A, from a human cell in response to a specific stimulus. Right, stimulus, here's the human cell, chemical A being released. Which cell structure plays a direct role in the release of this chemical from the cell? Is it A, the nucleus, B, the cell membrane, C, the ribosome, or D, the chloroplast? Number 10, the diagram below represents a portion of the cell membrane. The arrow indicates that the cell membrane is carrying out the process of, right? You can see you've got ATP being used, an H plus pump. You've got H plus going from low to high against the flow. The arrow indicates that the cell membrane is carrying out the process of A, respiration, B, diffusion, C, cell recognition, D, active transport. Number 11, the diagram below illustrates the movement of glucose across the cell membrane. Here's the key here, glucose molecules. There's a low concentration of glucose outside of the cell, a high concentration of glucose inside the cell, and the glucose is moving in. Which two processes are most directly represented in this diagram? A, ATP synthesis and the diffusion of water. B, molecule transport and energy use. C, homeostasis and ATP synthesis. Or D, homeostasis and the diffusion of water. All right, we're like a third of the way through the test. You're doing great. How's it going? All right, let's move on. The diagram below represents a cell. We've got labeled structures A, B, C, and D. Which structure shown in the diagram is responsible for the synthesis of ATP? Is it A, B, C, or D? Number 13. As human red blood cells mature, they lose their nuclei. As a result of this loss, which process would be impossible for mature red blood cells to carry out? A, respiration, B, excretion, C, reproduction, D, transport. Number 14. An amoeba is a single-celled organism. It uses its cell membrane to obtain food from its environment, digests the food with the help of organelles called lysosomes, and uses other organelles to process the digested food. From this, we can best infer that A, single-celled organisms are as complex as multicellular organisms. B, amoebas are capable of digesting any type of food molecule. C, structures in the amoebas have functions similar to organs in multicellular organisms. D, all single-celled organisms have lysosomes to digest food. Question 15. An investigation was conducted to compare two different types of plants. A student used a microscope to observe the cells in a cross-section of a lilac leaf and a cell from the leaf of a freshwater plant. This is the lilac leaf. Here's a freshwater plant cell. Which row in the chart correctly identifies the structure in a diagram and a process it performs. Row 1, mitochondrion excretion. Yeah, they're looking for structure Y. Row 2, nucleus and regulation. 3, chloroplast and photosynthesis. 4, ribosome and protein synthesis. So answer choice A is row 1, answer choice B is row 2, C, row 3, D, row 4. Many disorders, number 16, many disorders are due to the inability of an individual to break down a particular chemical. Sometimes these disorders can be treated by giving the affected individual the appropriate A, enzymes, B, organelles, C, antigens, D, chromosomes. Number 17, to capture their prey, spiders have fangs, which pierce the body wall of insects and inject venom. Spider venoms usually contain specific proteins that attack the cell membranes of the prey. The membranes and most of the contents of the insect's body turn into a liquid that the spider then ingests for food. These specific venom proteins are most likely A, biological catalysts, B, regulatory hormones, C, DNA molecules, or D, ATP molecules. Question 18. The diagram below represents a process that occurs in human systems. So you have a complex sugar sitting on a catalyst, you add water, and now you have two simple sugars, and catalyst is the same. This process is known as A, excretion, B, respiration, C, circulation, or D, digestion. Number 19, which biological process is represented in this diagram? So you've got a green plant cell, you've got oxygen and food coming in, ATP coming out, carbon dioxide and water coming out. Is this A, photosynthesis, B, respiration, C, digestion, or D, replication? Number 20. Which organisms and set of characteristics are correctly paired? Is it A, decomposers carry out photosynthesis and autotrophic nutrition? B, plants carry out respiration and autotrophic nutrition? C, fungi carry out photosynthesis and heterotrophic nutrition? D, animals carry out autotrophic nutrition and heterotrophic nutrition? Number 21. The setup below shows 4 test tubes. Tube 1 contains water only. Tube 2 contains a live snail. Tube 3 contains a live green water plant. Tube 4 contains both a live green water plant and a live snail. Tube 1, 2, 3, and 4. In the setup shown, which tubes contain at least one organism carrying on cellular respiration? Is it A, tubes 2, 3, and 4 only? B, tubes 3 and 4 only? C, tubes 1 and 2 only? Or D, tubes 2 and 4 only? (22) A common cycle in biology is represented below. We have ADP, ATP, and you've got P's coming in, P's going out. The ATP molecule above is commonly used to A, move molecules from a high to a low concentration, B, balance the nutrients in an ecosystem, C, actively transport molecules in an organism, D, diffuse water across a membrane. (23) We're about 2/3 of the way through the test. Hopefully you're still feeling pretty good. That's good. All right. These are some good Regents questions. Question 23. The diagrams below represent a single-celled organism and a multicellular organism. Rotenone is an insecticide that is toxic to humans as well as to insects. Rotenone interferes with the process of ATP production in the cell. Which row in the chart below correctly identifies the structure where ATP is produced and the reason why is it affected by rotenone? Okay, is it A, row 1, structure A would be unable to store enzymes for ATP production? Is it B, row 2, structure B, production of ATP would occur less efficiently? Is it C, row 3, C, the raw materials used for ATP would be altered? Or is it D, row 4, D, absorption of ATP would increase at this place? "24. Animals and green plants are similar in that they A, both carry out heterotrophic nutrition. B, all produce offspring by asexual reproduction. C, all require oxygen to carry out photosynthesis. Or D, both use DNA to transmit hereditary information to their offspring." "25. Most of the reactions by which energy from carbohydrates is released for use by the cell takes place within the A, ribosomes, B, vacuoles, C, mitochondria, or D, nuclei." All right, question 26. Substance X directly supplies energy for various life functions, as shown in this diagram below. So substance X provides energy to transmit chemical signals, to contract muscles, to eliminate waste, and to transform materials for use. Which substance is represented by X in the diagram? Is it A, glucose, B, DNA, C, starch, D, ATP? 27. The Venus flytrap is a plant. It uses specialized leaves in order to capture and digest small insects. Enzymes secreted by cells in the leaves of the Venus flytrap can digest A, proteins into amino acids, B, amino acids into fats, C, proteins into sugars, or D, sugars into starches. 28. The structural formula shown below represents parts of two different complex carbohydrate molecules composed of glucose subunits. Molecules 1 and 2 differ in their overall structure. So here's molecule 1, a chain of 1, 2, 3, 4 glucoses. Here's molecule 2, it's got a chain of 4 glucoses plus 2 extra glucoses stuck to the side. Due to the differences in structure, each of these molecules most likely A, contains different elements, B, is composed of different molecular bases, C, performs a different function, D, forms a different protein. 29. I knew this would come in. This classic question. 29. The diagram below represents the distribution of some molecules inside and outside of an artificial cell over a period of time. All right, so here's the cell. You've got circles are water, squares are oxygen, triangles are protein. Okay, here's the before and here's the after. Before and after. Okay. Which one of the following statements best supported by the diagram? A, protein molecules are kept inside of the cell because the cell needs them. B, oxygen molecules entered the cell over time by active transport. C, the protein molecules are too large to diffuse outside of the cell. D, water molecules are too large to enter or leave the cell, so they remained where they were at the start of the investigation. Number 30, a model cell setup is represented in the initial state diagram below. Which of the following diagrams indicates the areas where each of these substances would be located after 20 minutes? Is it diagram A, diagram B, diagram C, or diagram D? "31. The diagram below represents a model cell setup. The locations of 3 different substances are indicated in the diagram. Right? You got starch, glucose, and starch indicator, iodine. Which one of the statements best describes what will most likely happen in the given experiment after several minutes? A, the contents of the model cell will change color. B, the model cell will rupture. C, the model cell will shrink. D, the liquid outside the model cell will change color. (32). All right, we've got artificial cell with glucose and starch, water containing a starch indicator. After 2 hours, the color in the liquid of the beaker shown did not change. This shows that A, glucose molecules combined to produce starch in the artificial cell. B, starch did not pass out of the artificial cell. C, glucose moved from the artificial cell into the beaker. Or D, starch was digested to glucose in the artificial cell. All right, a last question on the test, number 33. The diagram below represents an experimental setup. You've got starch indicator in water. You've got dialysis tube filled with starch solution. Which term correctly identifies the process by which molecules move through the dialysis tube membrane? Is it A, active transport, B, diffusion, C, digestion, or D, paper chromatography? And that ends the test. Give yourself a nice pat on the back. Remember, put in the comments, right? So you have to submit the test and then put in the comments if you want to get a restart and try it again. That's fine with me. Take it as many times as you need to get the grade that you think best represents you. The worst thing that happens is you just practice Regents questions over and over and over again, and you're better prepared for the Regents. All right, that's Mr. Kovac signing off from today's test.